This presentation is mostly the same as something I provided during Summit, but we've also, for anyone that saw it at the session at Summit, I've got a few new things added as well. Before we get started, I'll just kind of repeat. My name is Forrest Evans. I'm the Director of Product for the Rundeck Enterprise product at PagerDuty. And with me today, I have Miguel Ramos, who is a product designer for the Rundeck team. And today we're going to chat about all the new features that came out with our 3.4 release. We'll go through the big features that came out with the 3.4.0. And then we can talk a little bit about also the 3.4.1. It's not on the agenda here, but we have what came out in 3.4.1 a couple weeks ago and a preview of what's coming up in about a week or so for 3.4.2. And we'll wrap up with a little bit of what else you can expect to see from Rundeck later this year. For those that might not know much about Rundeck, we'll kind of set the stage a little bit about what Rundeck does and how it can help you. Businesses today have pretty complex infrastructures and a variety of systems, all supporting their primary business function. So when an incident comes along, that complexity can result in a myriad of questions and follow-up tasks to resolve the incident. But how does someone keep the lights on, keep track of all the scripts, et cetera? And how many people are you going to have to call to get that problem solved? By combining Rundeck with existing and new scripts, APIs, and other tooling, subject matter experts can define workflows to perform complex technical tasks and automate incident resolution. In addition to creating these workflows, Rundeck offers self-service operations. So here, Betty's inundated with requests on a regular basis. With Rundeck workflows, Betty can safely share those complex technical processes with others that they can execute the tasks when they need to. Rundeck also has a rich ecosystem of plugins and integrations that further simplify automation. And these integrations allow Rundeck to react to alerts from things like Datadog or Sensu, update your incident details in PagerDuty, or use secrets from HashiCorp, and in our more recent releases, Thycotic and CyberArk. So our 3.4 release that we announced just shortly before Summit was driven by a few key roadmap themes that we established in 2020. There's a lot that we want to do and plan to do for Rundeck. And as we step back and listen to customer feedback, a large portion of that feedback revolved around these themes. Intuitive usability drove one of the most impactful features of our 3.4 release, and a lot of Miguel's life for the last 6 to 8 months. Our goal was to reduce the complexity of using Rundeck so operators can focus on building the automation and not figuring out how to use Rundeck. Helping Useful is focused on streamlining Rundeck, whether it's a new installation or configuring new settings. We learned from working with customers that getting going with Rundeck was a regular pain point. And I'll take a sidestep off of sort of the rough script we have and just mention that Rob has already posted a question. If there are other questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A. But Rob, for you as a Rundeck noob and how you can use Rundeck, I've got a great solution for you that came out alongside the 3.4 release that we'll talk about a little bit later. The final theme was around customer ecosystem. And as we saw on the previous slide, Rundeck can connect to many different systems. We wanted to continue expanding those integration capabilities that our customers can use to automate their runbooks quickly and efficiently. So Miguel can talk a little bit about the design changes that we built from 3.4. If you're new to Rundeck, these may not have a lot of context, not knowing the old version, but they're still very cool. So go ahead, Miguel.
Awesome. Thank you, Forrest. The biggest impact from our intuitive usability program, and likely the first change a past Rundecker might notice, is a whole new redesigned UI. The team took a lot of feedback from our existing customers and incorporated best practice design choices, and of course, some new technology to produce the best looking Rundeck to date. So why did we feel like we needed a redesign? Intuitive usability translates into approachability for users beyond the subject matter experts or automation engineers developing in Rundeck on a daily basis. The new help desk technician running their first automation from Rundeck will know intuitively how to achieve their goals. Providing hierarchy to the overall layout will help users in navigating the UI and reducing the friction to the user's intended goal. These improvements can seem a bit like simple artistic changes, but behind them are key functional improvements that simplify workflow for users. So let's show off some of the highlights. First, we reduced and redesigned the project menu. The smaller size opened up a lot more work area, allowing job writers and Rundeck admins to see more without losing access to the features they need close by. The new menu also has some key functionality to reduce scrolling for buttons, as well as allow us to scale more items into the menu, ensuring that all the areas available are highlighted and available on the screen. Removing the accordion interaction of the previous UI, the menu will provide consistency to where features are positioned in the menu. The drawer allows for higher visibility of nested items and room for future expansion to the Rundeck feature set. Keen observers of the last slide will notice that the projects menu wasn't on the left navigation bar anymore. From observing customer behavior and listening to the feedback from some of the heaviest users of Rundeck, quickly switching between projects was important to getting work done faster. The new project picker in the top navigation allows easy access to your projects at all times and includes a quick search function to find that important project faster. Rundeck plugins are a way to add new functionality to the Rundeck platform for things like job steps, node sources, webhook processors, etc. With 3.4, we introduce a new plugin point and a set of functionality to the UI. The utility bar is a footer across the bottom of the Rundeck interface. So many systems leverage that simple bit of functionality lurking just off the screen quickly, ready for when you need it. The utility bar offers just that. In 3.4.0, we've included a version widget, news widget, and a few others. And we have lots of ideas for future widgets to help Rundeck users do more without changing context. The documentation on how to write your own utility bar plugins will also be available, or feel free to reach out, and we can chat about ideas that might be on your list. On top of the feature design changes we've spoken about, we are also continuously enhancing our UI. Overall, these visual enhancements are meant to make Rundeck an even more pleasant experience for all Rundeck users. Some of the additional UI enhancements you may notice are distinct CTA colors. They are a great way to help navigate users to select the highest priority action on the page. Zebra striped tables. Additional contrast between table rows are a simple yet effective way to visually differentiate between rows. And tab context, active states and highlights. With a more pronounced style, it is easier to know where you are and seeing the available navigation items. Now Forrest will walk through the key feature offerings that also come with the 3.4.0 release.
Great, thanks, Miguel. So before I dive into this first enhancement too deep, I'll offer a bit of context for those that are new or have never tried to configure Rundeck. Rundeck prides itself on offering customers the ability to turn a lot of knobs, flip a lot of switches when it comes to features and functionality. We want Rundeck to work the way you need it for your users. That configuration management used to happen on the server console in text files on the file system. Subsequently, many of those settings also required a restart of Rundeck to take effect. So I put this one first because I'm super happy about this feature that with version 3.0, it's now possible to configure Rundeck inside the GUI, and almost all of the settings do not require a restart. So if you need to reconfigure plugins, to use a new API key, you can configure those settings right in the UI and start using your job steps or see the changes immediately. The settings are also stored in the Rundeck database. So they're shared across all of your cluster members immediately if you're running a Rundeck cluster. There's no need to worry about visiting each server console and update that certain setting in that certain file for each server in your cluster. So this is a great new feature, and we even have some more updates planned for it in the next couple of releases. The next feature that came out in 3.4.0 relates to job queuing. Some technical operations simply can't be run in parallel. Depending on the job, if the same one was executed while the previous execution was running, that might create a little havoc on the systems being managed. One example from a customer of ours, we regularly need to reboot a fleet of our Tomcat servers. It's a very methodical process, and they can only be restarted one at a time. And they underlined this when they emailed me this use case, that we have to be very careful. With this feature, we can now trust that only one server at a time will get rebooted and come back online before the next reboot happens. So for this customer, this new feature allows them to line up those jobs one behind another. When one execution finishes, the next one will start, and allows them to queue all the work up that needs to be done at once without risking chaos in production. The protection this feature offers unlocks the ability to share more sensitive activities with a larger set of users without relying on that subject matter expert to know what is allowed to be executed when. We enhance some of the ACL configuration. This adds new access control list functionality, and Rundeck aims to streamline sharing your Runbook automation projects with all your users. So we added project level ACLs for the key storage component. And I realize that might not mean a lot if you're brand new to Rundeck, but Rundeck's organized into projects, and those projects are typically shared with a specific group of users. Now the key storage component can be associated with that project, and you can give those users access just to the passwords they need for that project rather than a larger set of the password store. Rundeck Enterprise isn't just a place to drop your own scripts either. Our partner integrations are a key component of the enterprise offering. So with 3.4.0, we're proud to announce that Thycotic kind of joined that party, and similar to our existing HashiCorp Vault plugin, the Thycotic plugin replaces that built-in key storage that I just talked about, where Rundeck keeps all your sensitive passwords, certificates, etc., with the Thycotic backend. So if you're already using Thycotic to manage your passwords and take advantage of all of their benefits of, cycling keys and passwords, you can use that backend in Rundeck to supplement your automation. And there was so much more in 3.4.0 as well. We significantly changed the performance, reducing a lot of operations from minutes down to seconds, and improved some scaling. We moved our installation sources. This was less of a feature and more driven by Bintray going sunsetting their offering, but we're now using packages.rundeck.com for all of our package deployment. Our system report that had been available since about 3.3.4 or 3.3.5 went full GA. You can use that to see what's going on inside your Rundeck instance, as well as a variety of other features, all covered on the release notes of 3.4.0. So now we get to take a look at what's come out since 3.4.0. And in 3.4.1, we released that back on July 15th. We continued our redesign efforts with a webhooks redesign. And maybe Miguel, if you have any comments briefly on the webhooks redesign?
Sure. One of the key things that we wanted to update is making it easily visible when it comes down to copying and selecting the URL for your webhook, as well as navigating other webhook items. I think it's going to make it a lot easier.
Great. And then we also added a CyberArk key storage plugin. So once again, this was driven by a lot of customer requests, and will allow you to, if you're using CyberArk to manage your keys, connect and use those in your automation. So those are available now with version 3.4.1. And now we're going to show you a little preview of what's coming up in 3.4.2. And I'm going to talk briefly about incubating features before I get to what's coming up. We release incubating features pretty regularly in the sense that we like to get things out early and get the feedback and understand how customers might use it, what issues they might run into. You can think of it as beta, but we've used incubating because sometimes it's even way before beta. It's not even, we're not even sure if it's the right way to go. So we have two Incubating Features, actually coming out with our 3.4.2 release that's due out in approximately a week or so. The result data feature brings what was succinctly said to me as output data that's easy to digest. Log output can be long, complicated, and definitely lacks a lot of focus. There's a lot of noise in there. So you can use this to output key log data in an easily consumable and consistent format. The job data output is also available through its own API endpoint. So you can go to that particular activity entry, grab the job data, and use that structured data in other systems. This initial release builds JSON output, either from a user-defined template or just one of the global variable namespaces. There will be more details about it in the release notes and the documentation upon release. And at this point, I'll be honest, we know this feature is going to be valuable. We've had a lot of customers ask for it, but we've had a hard time coming up with like a great succinct use case to explain it broadly. We have ideas, but that's where you as our community come in. We're definitely interested in hearing about use cases you might have, that if you could run a job and put out your own structured data, how would you use that in your business? So you can let us know on the forums. There's a link towards the end of the slides about how to get into the forums, and or we can open it up to Q&A towards the end. The next incubating feature is a first step in a longer plan, but for our enterprise customers, you have access to something called the rule set strategy. And this rule set visualization allows you to see how that workflow really maps out as you write the rules in the rule set. So the rule set is written using these rules you see on the left, and the visualization just comes around and says, okay, this is what, based on the rules you've written, how the workflow is going to flow. We do plan on taking this further and trying to get to a point of, click and drag to, write the rules for you. So you don't have to write these complicated rules on the left, but wanted to get, we do want to get feedback on, how this is working and what else you might like to see. So those are two incubating features. We have a few other enhancements to some plugins, et cetera, coming with 3.4.2 around Azure and ServiceNow. And of course, the whole host of bug fixes that come with each release. And now I can take a little bit of time and look at the future of Rundeck Enterprise, and how our teams are looking at the future of automation broadly. Our overarching theme for this next year is to help our customers streamline those self-service operations. So we plan on doing this in a few ways. At the summit keynote, Runbook Actions was announced. This feature will offer tight integration with Rundeck Enterprise at GA. So that GA, I believe, is later in October. And we'll also continue to build out Rundeck Enterprise, for the enterprise. So we're going to expand some partner integration presence and enhance the ones we already have. And we've already started down that path, as I mentioned, with some ServiceNow and Azure enhancements that are coming out next week. Integrations really are the low code, no code approach to building these workflows and simplify getting your automation going. You don't have to write the script or figure out the API. We can do that for you, and you just provide the information we need. We also have plans to address some of the most complex infrastructure challenges and help Rundeck scale to larger environments. So we're going to keep iterating on those performance improvements that we released at 3.4.0. And then finally, we'll continue our efforts around the redesign and dive deeper into the functional areas of Rundeck. We did, Miguel did a great job designing all of that shell around all of the features, and all of the, what I'd call the functional areas didn't really change that much until 3.4.1, as we saw webhooks got its first redesign. We also released and will continue to build out the Rundeck content program. Like we realize that not everyone is an automation Picasso, and writing jobs and working with Rundeck can be an art form at times. And sometimes all it takes is a few examples to get going. With the 3.4 release, we kicked off our Rundeck content program, and we've continued just pushing content all the time. And the program aims to enable y'all with information that you need to configure and build Rundeck. There's a standalone tutorial environments, including functional environments you can use, how-to articles covering other use cases using those welcome projects, and more plugins and content are on the way. There's a learning site, and the URL again is on the URL page that's coming up in the slide or two, where you can get started with Rundeck. And Rob, I will even show that to you because I'm pretty sure Tracy's going to want me to do some demos here in a second. But that's your place to go and get started learning Rundeck. Look at that, we got to the link slide. So if you'd like to see more, see a demo and get connected, there's rundeck.com to see a demo. The learning site that I just talked about with the welcome projects and the tutorials is on our documentation site /learning. And then come join the Rundeck forums, chat about the new features. I'm in there and very active in that forum. Join up the community.pagerduty.com and find the Rundeck forum.
To show us some of those incubating features, that would be a great addition.
Yeah, let's take a look at some of those. So for context, this is this environment that I'm running is directly from our learning site. I'm gonna do the plug for this because we put a lot of time into it. I think it's super valuable. So you can go to learning.rundeck.com. There's links to the welcome projects. There's the whole tutorial here on getting started and how to get started with the welcome projects, as well as a whole host of other how-tos, right? If you want to know, how to install Rundeck Community on CentOS. Some of them are strangely specific. If you want to learn how to use Rundeck webhooks, there's all kinds of great content in here to help you get up and useful or up and started with Rundeck. So this environment that I run I'm in it all day, every day. I use the welcome projects to prove out and test things that my team builds and that Miguel designs. And we'll jump in here and check out this welcome project. And if I come to my jobs section, I have two job focused features that are in that incubating. The first one is the job data example, and we will run this job. And what this job does, as I mentioned before, we don't have a great, we haven't come up with a great succinct use case right now. So this is more of just a fun job. This job will do a roll of the dice for us, tell us our fortune, and tell us what kind of luck we're going to have. If we look at the log output, there's a lot of information in here and a lot that I don't really know what to do with. With our result data tab, now I have this structured data that I can pull each time from this particular API endpoint. And this was, if I show you how this was built, this is something we call an execution plugin. So at the end of the execution, I've said I want to build a JSON template, and I want to build it in this format using these variables from the job workflow. These workflows are, just output their log filters from each step that was run in the job. And that job data will then be generated at each step along the way. So that's coming 3.4.2 next week, as well as the fancy and fun rule set example. This one also requires editing this job. And when we take a look at our rule set strategy, I'll make this a little bit bigger here. And as we make changes, as you saw in the GIF, our rule set strategy will change. So if I decide that instead of after B, I want to run D, I want to run E, it will say, great, we're gonna zig, and then we're gonna zag back to E, and then E needs to run. So the E is the label of each of these steps. You can, in your rule sets, you can either use the label or you can use the number step. Sometimes, contrary to this example, it's better to use the label, because if you drag these up and down, the ones and twos kind of change. But as you can see, it works for both. Good question, Dawn. Migration from 3.4 to earlier versions. All of the steps and important migration steps. What version you put in chat, or another question? What version are you? Depends on what version you're coming from. If you go to the administration guide, there's an upgrading section here. And this is our upgrade to Rundeck 3.4 steps. if you're coming from something prior to 3.3.5, there are a few specific steps you want to do. Anything after 3.3.5, it's pretty straightforward. There's a few gotchas if you're running any Jira plugins, and then there's a few things that were deprecated. So you definitely want to check this out. If you're coming from anything older than the 3.3 series, then you want to kind of step through these methodically. So if you're on, say you're on something on like 3.2 or 3.1, if you're on 3.2, you would want to read also the changes in 3.3, because all of them are going to get piled on top of each other as you move forward. Another comment on upgrades with 3.4, and this is more of kind of a dirty details behind the scene thing. We built in something called DB migration, and this was specifically to address a lot of past pains with upgrading. So now, as we upgrade between versions, that if they require schema changes or we need to make changes within the database, we have a very strong methodical way to do that. There's this initial, if you were less than 3.3.5, a few steps that you might need to go through, and we have run across customers that didn't check this out when they upgraded and maybe ran into a couple of problems. So be sure that you follow these steps if you're prior to 3.3.5. But going forward, beyond 3.4.0, where this was introduced, upgrades should get even cleaner.